In this video, I'm going to give you a quick overview and tour of my home lab. I'll show you the hardware that I use, its specs, the hypervisor that I decided to use, the VMs that I have running, some containers, and a lot more. Let's start with the hypervisor that I decided to use. On my browser, you can see here XOA, that is in Orchestra, and that is just a GUI that is used by the xcp-ng hypervisor. Nowadays, what people use mostly is Proxmox. I decided to go with xcp-ng years ago. It has worked great for me, so I haven't had the need to change. But if you go on YouTube, all of the tutorials, if not most of them, are going to be Proxmox related. So if you're about to get started, take that into account. If you would like to see more xcp-ng related content, let me know down in the comments as well. So let's start with the main hardware that I use in my home lab. If I go to home hosts here, you'll be able to see that I have 3 hosts. And I'll show you the specs. This one is 32 gigs of RAM, and this one is 64. Notice the xcp-ng version that they're running. You can see their private IPs here as well. As you can see here, I'm running out of memory on these 2 hosts. So I'm planning to upgrade them to 64 gigs of RAM as well. It's still a little bit expensive. That's the main reason I haven't done so, but I will eventually. Let me go into one of these so you can see the specs. You can see how many cores this specific device has, the RAM, xcp-ng version. You can see the model with the hardware where it's running. It's a Dell microcomputer. And let's see the size so you can have a better idea. This image gives you a good reference on the size. Notice that it's quite small. And that's one of the main reasons I chose to go with these machines. They're really small. They don't consume any power. They don't make any noise at all. Am I planning to upgrade to real servers in the future? Maybe. The main reason is pricing. They're expensive and I just cannot afford them right now. But it's a possibility that I keep around. Notice down here that this one has 20 gigs of RAM free out of the 64. I'm gonna go to the advanced tab. And here you can see the CPU model. It's an Intel CPU, comes with a dedicated graphics card, 12 cores, and here's the model. All of these are the same except for the RAM. If we go to the storage tab, each one of these has a 1 terabyte NVMe, and they also have a 2 terabyte SSD attached to them that I pass through to my storage servers. So now let's go to the VMs tab, and I'll go over the different virtual machines that I have running. First of all, and really important, DNS. I have 3 DNS servers. I use Bind 9. Here's the website. Notice that it's a transparent open source DNS system. So I have these 3 in a master-slave configuration. And what that means is that I can lose 2 of my DNS servers in my home lab. If one of them keeps running, DNS is still going to work internally. You will also notice here on the right side where each VM is running. DNS1 is running on XCP1, XCP2, and XCP3. So that means that if I shut down 2 of my main servers, and if I leave just one up, DNS is still going to be working in my home. Let me jump to my terminal real quick, and I'm going to run a command so you can see the DNS servers configured. Notice that here they are, DNS1, 2, and 3. And that's the reason why I can get to the service using the DNS name instead of an IP. Moving on to the next virtual machines, I have 3 Docker servers that I'm running in Docker Swarm. This is a 4th one that is not part of the Swarm. I just set it up as part of a demonstration, but it's not even active, I think. These are the main 3. This means that one of my servers can go down, CP1, 2, or 3, and my Docker Swarm is still going to be running. So let me show you the containers that I have running real quick. I'm just going to execute this script. I'm going to make this smaller so you can see all of them. Just created a new tmux pane so that I can show you the resources that each one is using with this other script, Docker stats. And here you can see how many CPU and memory each one of them is using. Notice that XOA is using 428 megs right now. Notice this one as well. There's definitely something going on, so I have to check on that. In case you're wondering what I use this container for, of course, is to download my Ubuntu ISOs. I have a video in which I explain the difference between Docker and Docker Swarm, in case you want to go and check it out. I also have another video in which I show how to install Docker in a Debian server. I'm going to leave them in the video description. Moving on, I have 3 load balancers. I use these with Kubernetes. Notice that I have 6 Kubernetes VMs running here. These 3 are control plane nodes, and these 3 are worker nodes. So what that means again is that I can lose one of the servers in my home lab. I can bring it down for maintenance, and the Kubernetes cluster is still going to keep working as usual without any issues. I'm not fully migrated to Kubernetes yet, migrating from Docker Swarm to it, but I already have a few containers up. Let me show you real quick. I'm just going to create a new tmux pane here, and if I run the kubectl get nodes command, you'll be able to see that I have 3 control plane nodes. The version that I'm running, all of them already, and here are the 3 worker nodes. Let me show you which deployments I have here with Helm list, all namespaces, and here you can see some of the apps that I have installed. I haven't had the time to migrate everything over, but I'll continue working on that one of these days. So what else do I have here? Notice that I have 3 storage servers, and I use these to share storage or to have common storage across my Docker Swarm nodes. I'm running a glusterfs cluster in the background. I know glusterfs might not be that popular these days, so if you can and have the resources and time, instead I would recommend you to run a ceph cluster. Let me open that in a new tab. Ceph cluster, here you can see ceph storage cluster. That's what I'm doing in Kubernetes. If we jump back here, you're going to notice that I have rook ceph running. That's what I'm planning on using as the storage solution across my Kubernetes nodes. But in Docker Swarm, I'm still using Gluster. Let me log into one of the hosts real quick so you can have a better idea of what's going on here. I'm going to SSH to my storage 3 server. I can pick any, doesn't matter. So if I run a sudo cluster volume list command, you'll be able to see that I have some volumes that I'm sharing. Let's see the details of this container data volume. Notice that it has 3 bricks. The type is set to replicate, and each one of the bricks is on a different storage server. And having a common storage is what allows me to bring one of the hosts down. I can bring Docker 3 down, for example. These containers that you see here are going to be rescheduled in these 2 servers. And since they share common storage over the network, they will be able to pick up that data that I share from the glusterfs cluster. Again, I'm not sure if glusterfs is still used a lot these days. That's the solution I went for. But if you use a different common storage solution in your Docker Swarm cluster, please let me know in the comments. I'd like to know more about other options. What else do we have here? xocli 3. I use this VM to deploy new virtual machines in my home lab. I have some bash scripts that take care of everything. Let me give you a quick demo on how this works. I'm gonna close out of here. Let's say that I want to create a new VM. I have this script, VM new, just gonna run it. I'm just going to give it this name, August 14th. I'm going to save and quit this file. Here's where I specify on which server I wanted to have deployed, the amount of cores, RAM. I give it 2 gigs of RAM. If I want swap to be enabled, and the swap size. If I want to install additional packages, I'm just going to save and quit here. This gives me a summary of what's about to happen. I'm just going to type yes. Notice that it's doing some stuff in the background, copying some scripts, is deploying the VM right now, starting the VM, it's getting the IP address that my router assigned to the VM, and then it's going to reserve that IP address on my router. As you can see here, it reserved the IP. It's adding a DNS entry as well. It was added, and I also pushed that to GitHub. Notice here that it also added an entry to my SSH config file on my Mac, created a snapshot for the VM, and it was created successfully. And if we come back here, we're going to see the VM, August 14th, with its snapshot created. So to do all that, I use xocli in the background, and I use bash scripts. This is a zabbix server. It's old, it's not even running anymore because I migrated this server to Docker. I'm running it as a container. As you can see here, I'm monitoring my VMs on the network. If I go to the problems tab, you will notice that I have some alerts. Memory usage is high. I also need to patch the servers. Notice that I have a lot of missing patches from zabbix. I send these alerts to pagerduty so that I can get a page on my phone. I can get an alert on my phone. Notice that here you can see the same alerts that I have here in zabbix. What else do I have here? Let me go through the machines that are off right now. You'll notice that I have a Windows machine running. Let me start it real quick. This one is configured to use 12 gigs of RAM for cores because you know that sometimes Windows needs a lot of resources. The machine is up. Let's go to the console here. It does seem to be up. How do I manage it? I RDP into it using the remote desktop utility. Here it is. I'm just going to open it, continue. And here's the Windows machine. It works quite well. I rarely use Windows. I specifically use it for university courses because I'm forced to use Microsoft products there. Like in the database course, we used SQL Server the entire course. I would have preferred, of course, something not Microsoft related like MySQL or MariaDB, but sometimes you just have to force yourself to learn things that you don't want, but might be useful in the future. What else do I have here? I don't have any other VMs. So all my servers are connected to my home router, which is a mikrotik router. Let me log into it real quick. I'm going to open Winbox. Notice that this application is not available on macOS, so I have to run it through Wine. I have 2 ISPs in my home network. The main ISP is up right now. It has a lower distance. This means that this is the active ISP. The backup ISP is not active. As you can see, it doesn't have the A here for active. It has a higher distance. I'm not load balancing the charge. I'm just using it in a failover mode, which means that if the main ISP goes down, the router is going to detect it and automatically switch to the backup ISP. When the main ISP comes back up, it automatically switches back to it. Just keep in mind that I have my own DNS servers, so I don't use the DNS features on my router. Just gonna clean up this VM that I created as a demo. I have another script here, VM delete. What's the name? August 14th. I'm just gonna type the name here, August 14th. I'm gonna write this file again and quit. It's gonna ask me if I wanna delete this. Just gonna type yes here. It's gonna delete it from my DNS. It's going to delete the VM itself. Notice that it stopped it. It's deleting it right now. Notice that it also removed the IP address that it had reserved in my router, removed the entry in my DNS servers, and it removed it from my SSH config file. And I can see here that the VM is gone. Okay, so I think I covered everything that I needed to cover regarding my home lab. If you have questions, if you want to know more about something specific, let me know down in the comments. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you like the channel, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.